An explosion is heard more than 3,000 miles away from its source.
A man is sentenced to hang himself.
Another man goes to jail because he fried a steak.
Yes, impossible as those statements sound, they're all true. And this is Lindsay McCarry back with another session of Can You Imagine That? The proof of those statements made a moment ago will be forthcoming in just 1.5 minutes, so wait for us, will you please? Well, do you know what that was? It was our version of the terrific volcanic explosion of the island of Krakatoa. It takes the prize for being the world's biggest and loudest noise, and the most tragic. But before we tell you about it, we'll build up to it by telling you about other big noises. Our first is the dynamite explosion on the island of Nova Zembla in the Arctic one day in December 1933. The sound of it was detected in Berlin, Germany, more than 2,000 miles away. Can you imagine that? Then there was the noise caused by the landing of the Great Siberian Meteor on June 30, 1908, which was heard over a distance of 400 miles. Not only that, it affected weather instruments in Europe. But those two big noises are pikers when it comes to the explosion of Krakatoa. Their sounds were merely detected, while Krakatoa's was actually heard by human ears more than 3,000 miles away in Rodriguez. Krakatoa was an island in the Sunda Straits between Sumatra and Java. I say was because after the explosion caused by volcanic disturbances, only a cavity 1,000 feet below sea level was what remained of the island. But far more serious than the actual explosion was the effect. A succession of gigantic sea waves, some of them more than 50 feet in height, was generated. The destruction caused by these waves was beyond all imagination. Harbors, villages, settlements, and fishing fleets were wiped out by the inundations. 36,000 human beings were killed. But the most amazing fact in this story of cataclysm and disaster was that some of the waves generated by the explosion traveled to vast distances. Long waves, generated at periods of more than an hour, reached Cape Horn, 7,818 miles away. And science tells us that probably some of them reached the English Channel at a distance of 11,040 miles. This runs the amazing and terrible story of the destruction of the island of Krakatoa in August 1883. Here's a story that will touch a deep chord of sympathy within any of us who have experienced the gnawing, imperious pangs of hunger. It was in the month of January 1915 that detectives Carlin and Kelly were passing the lunchroom of Sigmund Luft, 338 West Van Buren Street, Chicago.
Hey, Carlin, take a look at that steak in the window of Luft's lunchroom.
Say, somebody ought to do something about Luft leaving swell-looking steaks like that sitting in his window. Makes a guy hungry just to look at it.
Yeah? Well, standing here won't get anything done for us. Come on.
About 2 hours later, detectives Carlin and Kelly again passed Luft's lunchroom. And this time...
Hey, Carlin, the steak's gone.
Gone? That's funny. Luft is closed up for the night.
Maybe he felt the same way we did about the steak and came back to get it. Come on, let's go. We gotta go.
Hey, wait a minute.
Listen. That's a steak frying. Smell it?
Yeah. And take a look at the lock of the door there. It's been broken. Come on. Take it easy.
All right, you. Put him up.
Oh, how did it...
Come on, Bud. You're going to take a little walk with us.
Oh, wait a minute, please.
Come on, come on.
No, wait, please. Let me finish the steak first, please.
No, nothing doing. That steak's coming along with us for evidence. Come on. Say, what's the idea of breaking in a place and eating all the...
Still begging to be allowed to eat the steak, the burglar was led to headquarters. Once there, he told the desk sergeant...
I just got here from Seattle 2 weeks ago. There wasn't any jobs, and I was stone broke. Gee, I'd have busted open the vault of the National Bank to get at that steak. That's how hungry I was.
And so the burglar's ravenous appetite, plus his inability to wait until he found a safer place to fry the steak, got him in bad with the law. Can you imagine that? Speaking of the law, here's a case where one of its administrators practiced what he preached. It was in Knoxville, Tennessee, that Magistrate John L. Minot was driving his car one day in February of 1931. He turned a street corner and...
All right. What's the idea? You're the driver of this car.
Yes, officer, I am. I turned the corner and crashed into this parked car.
Oh, you did, huh? Well, I didn't recognize you, Your Honor.
That's quite all right. I want you to issue a warrant, officer.
Warrant? But, Your Honor, this car you hit is parked all right.
I don't want you to issue a warrant for the owner of that car. I want you to issue it for John L. Minot.
For yourself, Your Honor?
Exactly. The charge is reckless driving.
Yes, Magistrate John L. Minot issued a warrant for himself. And in his court the next day...
Case of John L. Minot, charged with reckless driving. I find myself guilty and hereby sentence myself to a fine of $5 to be paid to the clerk. Here you are, clerk.
Well, our hats are off to Magistrate John L. Minot, who practiced what he preached and fined himself for reckless driving. I wonder if many of you know the origin of the phrase, the 400 of society. Well, it was back in the year 1892 that Mrs. William Astor gave her renowned ball at her famous residence at 5th Avenue and 34th Street in New York. A man named Ward McAllister, who was the accepted arbiter of things social, managed the affair. Because of the limited quarters in which to give the ball, McAllister restricted his invitation list to just 400. And the reason? Well, said Mr. McAllister,
I have restricted the invited guests to 400 in number simply because there are only 400 people who can be considered as being in society.
So from that remark comes our term 400 as applied to the bluebuds of society. Can you imagine that? Certainly one of the oddest things I have come across in my search for Can You Imagine That items is this one. It happened in the year 1672 in what is now New York City. Ben Jonson, not the Ben Jonson of literary fame, but another, was brought up for trial accused of theft. After deliberation, the city court rendered a verdict on November 26, 1672, said the presiding judge.
Ben Jonson, we've heard all the evidence against and for you, and it is now the judgment of this court that you die by hanging as a punishment for your thefts. Because you are the municipal hangman, you must therefore hang yourself to pay your debt to society.
I refuse to do that, Your Worship.
You will carry out faithfully the sentence of this court, Ben Jonson.
I won't. I refuse to hang myself.
Then we'll get someone who will do it. Mr. Featherstone, will you...
Hold off there a minute, Your Worship. You can't get anyone else to hang me, because the law says that I'm the official hangman of this municipality. And there ain't been a new one appointed. And you can't appoint a new one until I'm gone and out of the way. Well, I ain't gone. And I ain't going to hang myself, so I ain't going to be out of the way. I know me rights by the law, and I'm staying tight to them.
You will stand there a moment, Ben Jonson. Yes, of course, gentlemen. Ben Jonson, your logic is admirable, but your character is not. We find we cannot sentence you to hang yourself, but we do hereby sentence you to 39 lashes with the cat o' nine tails, the loss of one ear, and banishment from this colony.
And continuing with our studies in jurisprudence, I wonder if you can make a guess at who was the greatest policeman who ever lived. Well, some authorities say it was Jacob Hayes. Hayes was appointed the first and the only High Constable of New York. And why is he considered among the greats? Well, he was the first policeman to shadow a suspect. He was the first to use the so-called third-degree methods, and he was the first to shock a confession out of a murderer by confronting the suspect with the body of the victim. He traveled alone and was always in danger of being killed by cutthroats and bandits who infested New York Harbor. He loved to place himself in some waterfront dive, sit there inconspicuously, and size up the persons who entered. He had a photographic memory for faces. He could see a person once, and 10 years later, recall the person's name, what the person was wearing, where he had been seen, and he could even minutely describe identifying marks so small as to elude the ordinary observer. Can you imagine that? Well, comes now the time for our musical Can You Imagine That? This time it's another chance for you to play detective with a melody. First, we're going to play Stride la Vampa from Verdi's opera Il Trovatore. Then you're to guess what famous old German song it reminds you of. Are you ready? All right, here goes. Did you catch it? Well, in case you didn't, here's the song you've probably hummed or whistled at one time or another. At least you've heard it. Listen to it now and see how close Verdi came to this older song when he wrote Il Trovatore.
Liegst mir im Herzen, liegst mir im Sinn, machst mir viel Scherzen, weißt nicht, wie gut ich dir bin. Ja, weiß nicht, wie gut ich dir bin. Ja, 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 weiß nicht, wie gut ich dir bin. Du liegst mir im Herzen, du liegst mir im Sinn. Du machst mir viel Scherzen, weißt nicht, wie gut ich dir bin. Ja, 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 weißt nicht, wie gut ich dir bin. Ja, 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 weißt nicht, wie gut ich dir bin.
And with that little bit of melody sleuthing, I'm going to turn you now back to your own announcer. So until the next time we meet, this is Lindsay McCarry saying goodbye now.
5 noted men are swindled by 2 uneducated miners.
A man buys a few dollars worth of brass for $3,000.
The Battle of Bunker Hill never occurred.
Can you imagine that? Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is Lindsay McCarry back again with another assortment of odd facts and news items with which to regale you for the next few moments. Until we return to prove those statements, we hope you'll wait around for us just a moment or two, will you? Thank you. Can you imagine this? Listen.
The Battle of Bunker Hill never occurred.
And that is correct. The Battle of Bunker Hill never occurred. Why? Well, the fact is that during the War of the American Revolution, on the evening of June 16, 1775, colonial forces under the command of Major General Israel Putnam and Colonel William Prescott started to entrench on an elevation north of Boston known as Bunker Hill. But probably because the soil was hard and unmanageable, they retired to another hill known as Breed's Hill. And there they dug in their trenches and waited for the British forces under the command of General Thomas Gage. At length, the two armies met with considerable loss on both sides. Not on Bunker Hill, but on Breed's Hill. And so today the famed Bunker Hill Monument is really completely misnamed. Well, here's a very interesting story that proves how the first flush of an exciting discovery may blind everyone to the use of common, ordinary horse sense. It was in the summer of 1871 that 2 tanned, leathery-skinned prospectors showed up at the Bank of California in San Francisco. Slouching up to the teller's window, the spokesman for the 2 prospectors asked,
"Hey, me and my partner here, he'd like to know if we could store, sort of cash away some valuables in this here bank."
Valuables? Oh, I suppose so. You could rent a safety deposit box and put the valuables in it, but it'll cost money.
And so? Well, didn't expect to get nothing for nothing here. All right, we can pay for it.
Very well. Your name, please?
My name's John Slack. This here's my partner, Philip Arnold.
Howdy.
How do you do? And the valuables?
Right here in this sack. Here, I'll dump 'em out for you. There you are, son. Lock 'em till we get back. And, hey, what are you standing there with your mouth wide open for? Ain't you ever seen diamonds, rubies, and emeralds before?
Well, I've never seen that many in one place.
Well, lock 'em up and give me the key. Me and my partner's got to get back to our diggings to get some more of these toys. Come on, Phil.
and leaving the bank clerk staring after them, the 2 miners slouched off. Immediately, the clerk rushed to the head of the bank, William C. Ralston, a shrewd, intelligent man with a flair for speculation. Ralston found the 2 miners, talked with them, and offered to buy a half share in their discovery. But Ralston didn't do it before he heard the reports of geologists, one of whom said,
Mr. Ralston, I've never seen anything like this in my life. Why, those stones are up there ready for anyone to pick them up. And they're real, no fakes. It's amazing. Why, do you realize that we've barely begun to dig out the wealth from the earth? This mine and this region will soon rival South Africa as a diamond-producing center. And San Francisco can become greater than Amsterdam as a cutting and polishing center.
With that report ringing in his ears, William C. Ralston got together men like Horace Greeley, General George B. McClellan, Charles Lewis Tiffany, founder of the famed Tiffany's in New York, and wonder of wonders, Baron Rothschild, head of the far-famed banking house. The men were enthusiastic, and they met the 2 miners, Slack and Arnold.
Mr. Slack, Mr. Arnold, my partners and I are prepared to offer you a top price of $700,000 for your half interest in your mines. Now, that's reasonable considering that you're to share in the final profits, and we put up the money for developments, equipment, and labor. Now, what do you say?
Well, I ain't hankering to let go of it for so little. Your experts told you them stones was worth close to $1 million. And we brung you in another bag full of diamonds worth easy that much.
Yeah, but $700,000 is as high as we'll go. And you'll realize greater profits from your half interest when we start to work the mines.
Well, all right. I reckon you're playing fair. We'll take it.
And take the $700,000 they did. Ralston and his associates organized a company with a capital of $10 million. Gorgeous offices were opened, and it was announced that San Francisco would soon replace Amsterdam as the center of the diamond industry of the world. Then, when things were running along smoothly, 2 government geologists got a little suspicious. They went to the mine and...
Take a look at this. This stone shows the marks of a lapidary's tool. It's been cut. There aren't any stones in nature that you'll find already cut. It's too good.
Yeah, and I found diamonds and rubies and emeralds in the same matrix, in the same mother stone, and that just doesn't happen in nature. Boy, somebody's been taken to the tune of plenty of money. Why, these stones aren't worth over $10,000 at the most. They're all second rate.
What happened? How did a man of Ralston's ability happen to be taken in on such an old dodge as a salted mine? Well, remember that it happened in the days when the United States was in a fever of excitement over nature's wealth buried under the ground. Gold and silver had been found in vast quantities. Why not diamonds, emeralds, and rubies? At any rate, it remains as one of the most gigantic swindles in the history of confidence games. Ralston and his associates repaid all the money advanced, but for a long time they were accosted on the streets by rude persons who asked,
Say, I got some diamonds here I'd like you to take a look at.
And thus ended the gigantic diamond swindle of 1871, when 2 famous bankers, a leading journalist, a noted soldier, and the man who founded one of the leading jewelry concerns of the world were all taken in by 2 leathery-skinned, rough-talking miners. And here's another case in the American Southland where the principal character learned that all is not gold that glisters. And by the way, that's the way Shakespeare said it originally. All is not gold that glisters, not glitters. Anyway, it was on February 21, 1939, that 3 men walked into the malt shop of Herbert Siegel of Los Angeles. One of them, a rather tall, elegant-looking gent wearing a monocle, remarked,
Say, I'd like to settle down here and own a little shop like this. I imagine you do a pretty good business.
Oh, it's not so bad.
What would you take for it?
Well, I really don't know.
Well, how about $2,000? I'll offer you that.
2,000?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I hadn't thought about selling, but that's a pretty fair price, all right. If you're anxious to buy, I'll sell for that.
The elegant gentleman wearing the monocle had only $1,000 in cash on his person, so said his partner to Mr. Siegel,
Tell you what, I've got a box here with dental gold in it. The gold's worth $5,300.
$5,300? Say, isn't it pretty dangerous to carry that around?
Oh, no, but I'll tell you what we'll do. My friend here will give you the $1,000 he has in cash. I'll give you this gold. And you give me $3,000 for the gold. And we'll come back later with the sales forms, and I'll buy back my gold.
Let me see the gold.
All right, here you are.
Well, it looks like a lot of gold. All right, it's a deal.
Mr. Siegel paid $3,000 for the gold. The men left with the money and left Mr. Siegel holding not the bag, but the box filled with dental gold. Mr. Siegel waited and waited and waited. Then he went to the police, who told him,
Mr. Siegel, you've been swindled.
Swindled?
These aren't gold dental fillings. They're brass. And you paid $3,000 for them.
And so Mr. Herbert Siegel of Los Angeles, his eyes blinded momentarily by the flagrant flash of brass, paid $3,000 for a few dollars' worth of junk. Can you imagine that? Well, what's this? Oh, it's the annual banquet of my lodge. Yowza, some fun, huh? There'll be speeches, jokes, paper hats, many cigars, and then the annual election of officers. And when that's all over and the new president is announced, the whole gang will rise and sing...
For he's a jolly good fellow, for he's a jolly good fellow, for he's a jolly good fellow, which nobody can deny, which nobody can deny, which nobody can deny. For he's a jolly good fellow, for he's a jolly good fellow, for he's a jolly good fellow, which nobody can deny. We won't go home until morning, we won't go home until morning, we won't go home until morning, till daylight doth appear, till daylight doth appear, till daylight doth appear. home until morning. We won't go home until morning. We won't go home until morning. Till daylight doth appear.
Yes, sir, for he's a jolly good fellow. I have no doubt that you've sung that very same song many, many times in your days, but where did it come from? Well, that, I'm afraid, is more or less of a mystery. One thing's sure, it's very, very old. Older than any student of the history of music can vouch for. For instance, one source I found says that this tune, known to us today as For He's a Jolly Good Fellow or We Won't Get Home Until Morning, has been known for many centuries by the Arabs of Egypt as Malbruk Safir Lel Harbi. Another source reveals that there is a possibility that the tune was carried into the land of the heathen by Christian crusaders. And still another authority claims that song commemorates the unsuccessful attempts of John Churchill, 1st Duke of Marlborough, to undermine the monarchy of Louis XIV of France. At any rate, the tune is certainly an old one, and the oldest lyrics we've been able to find seem to bear out the latter story of the Duke of Marlborough. Here we have our male quartet singing an English translation of ancient verses to the original of the melody we know today as For He's a Jolly Good Fellow.
To fight the foe in battle, Midderto, Midderto, Middertaina. To fight the foe in battle, Sir Marlborough has gone. Sir Marlborough has gone. Sir Marlborough has gone. To fight the foe in battle, Midderto, Midderto, Middertaina. To fight the foe in battle, Sir Marlborough has gone. He will return at Easter, Midderto, Midderto, Middertaina. He will return at Easter when all the wars are done. When all the wars are done. When all the wars are done. He will return at Easter, Midderto, Midderto, Middertaina. He will return at Easter when all the wars are done. Sir Marlborough fell in battle, Midderto, Midderto, Middertaina. Sir Marlborough fell in battle, and now is in the grave. And now is in the grave, and now is in the grave. Sir Marlborough fell in battle, Midderto, Midderto, Middertaina. Sir Marlborough fell in battle, and now is in the grave.
And despite the story in that song, the words Midderto, Midderto, Middertaina have absolutely no meaning. Can you imagine that? Well, I guess it's about time once more to turn you over to your own announcer, and until we meet again on another session of Can You Imagine That, this is Lindsay McCary saying goodbye now.